what we're not being told, it's worth looking at how the mainstream media is spreading disinformation. They're already constructing narratives that are no different than the worst conspiracy theories, and yet we're supposed to trust what we're being told. And it's frustrating because I'll tell you, I've been combing the news feeds for stories that are being ignored because of the talking points the mainstream wishes to focus on right now. Now, it used to be that it was hard to cut through the COVID-19 stories because they were so pervasive. But now all of the worry right now is, well, the worry about COVID-19 is subsiding, and the news is particularly concerned with Russia and the imminent threat to Ukraine that has it's been lasted now more than 3 months. It's going to happen any day now. They've been saying this since November. Every morning I wake up and I read that Russia is going to attack any moment now. And they probably will eventually. I heard that something blew up today and they're calling it a false flag. Jen Psaki was already calling it false flag attacks. They were already talking about, they were actually giving us the whole narrative before the narrative even broke.
Go ahead. Thank you. Can you comment on Russia's investigation into claims of alleged mass graves of civilians supposedly killed by Ukrainian forces in the Russian-controlled regions in eastern Ukraine? Do you believe this is part of the false flag operations that you've been warning of?
Sure. Well, let me start by saying, as you heard the president say yesterday and Secretary Blinken earlier today, we're in the window where we believe an attack could come at any time, and that would be preceded by a fabricated pretext that the Russians use as an excuse to launch an invasion. And we've seen, and we've talked about this a bit in here, we've seen these tactics used in the past. So those could include, but not be limited to, the report you just referenced, claims of provocation in Donbass, false state media reports, which I think everybody should keep their eyes open and aware of that potential, faked videos, false accusations about chemical weapons, or accounts of attacks on Russian soldiers that have not actually occurred. So there could be a range of false flags and pretexts that we would expect would precede an invasion. And again, we remain in that window.
The reason why they're going to talk about false flags is because they're the masters of false flags. That's the why. That's the why, the wherefore. I heard that, and I've been hearing that now for weeks. Adam Schiff even said the same thing. They were saying things like, well, we contend that there will be a false flag attack, and that will be created by Vladimir Putin. And so there was a bombing today, I guess. Some military vehicle exploded, and there was a huge explosion. And I'm like thinking to myself, yeah, it's all going the way they said it would. Well, it's a false flag attack. It's going to bring us into war. And that's the thing. It looks as if Cold War intrigue is back and that Russia is all over the headlines, along with the whole Russian dossier spy stories connecting Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, the usual cast of idiots that are spying on Trump. I mean, is a war being forged in order to distract from a cover-up? Well, I mean, that's what it feels like. Again, wag the dog. Oh, the conspiracy theories that can be generated from all this stuff. And for me, I'm tired of all of it. I'm tired. It's a tired old story that needs to be put to bed because there seems to be no desire to arrest anyone, especially the real criminals. But, of course, the focus is on Russia and Trump on the left side of the fence, Ukraine and Biden on the right side of the fence. And leave it to me to come up the middle, because that's what I'm going to do tonight. We're going to come up the middle and reveal, let's just say we're going to reveal a creepier side to this rumor of war. And this creates an air of mystery as to what the plans are for the future. Now, I want to tell you, to start tonight, okay, this is a unique look as to what future warfare is going to look like and how a mass culling is not just a meaningless etching on the Georgia Guidestones. We all know that in the year 2000, we had the Project for a New American Century where they produced this title called Rebuilding America's Defenses, which contained a radical and belligerent extremist neoconservative policy ambition for America. Now, many of the officials who signed off on this document are the same people that have had a hand in throwing in the puppet government in Ukraine. And their report called itself a blueprint for maintaining global U.S. presence and shaping the international security order in line with American principles and interests. Now, the authors showed their genocidal mentality when they stated this. They said, advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare to a politically useful tool. Now, again, This is not a conspiracy theory. This is documented. The plans that were being executed behind the scenes included a new Pearl Harbor, and of course we got that with 9/11. And then in the documents, it talked about genetic technologies to be used in a new biological weapons usage that would be politically advantageous. Now, here we are almost post-COVID-19, and we're ready for war. But the looming question is, what kind of war are they planning? Now, will it be nuclear limited? Will it be a limited nuclear exchange, or some other hideous plan where governments can use plausible deniability with some false flag attack that will kill millions of people? Well, I have some unsettling clues about what is going on. And even in my research, I had to pause a bit. Why? Because the more I dug into this, the creepier it became. In 2017, the United States Air Force put out a request for samples of DNA and RNA from Russians and people of Russian descent. Their reasons were unclear. The story got very little coverage in the mainstream media. In fact, it got nothing. None. Vladimir Putin had mentioned it in a speech, and there have been articles in the alternative media that have mentioned this, and some international networks such as Russia Today, but mainstream news, no, totally silent. Nothing about how the U.S. Air Force wanted DNA samples from Russians and Russian descendants. And I had someone send me the Air Force request memo. It was entitled "Synovial Tissue Samples Needed." The memo states that the samples must be Caucasian and Russian, and that they will not consider samples from Ukraine. Again, they wanted synovial tissue samples, and the memo stated this: they must be of Caucasian and Russian descent, and they will not consider any samples from Ukraine. Now, why would that be the case? I mean, when I first saw that, I thought they're sampling DNA for biological weapons. I mean, and then I started noticing that there was a lot of discussion about the possibility that this is what they were doing. They were theorizing it's for bioweapons research, and that's, of course, that's possible. But there are a lot of other possibilities, I'm sure, that, I couldn't find much. But I just thought it was creepy, right? United States Air Force requesting synovial tissue samples back in 2017 of those who were Russian and of Russian descent. They did not want any samples from people who lived in Ukraine. Man, I can think of so many things that this could mean, and so many reasons why they were doing this. And none of them, I promise you, none of them, in my opinion, and I'm sure it would be benign. None of these are benign reasons. None of them. The lack of coverage of this issue in the mainstream media, while predictable, still serves to highlight how little objectivity our national free press really has. I mean, can you imagine the headlines if Russia or China or Iran's military had started doing research on American DNA samples? I can imagine the hysteria. And what about how China uses some of these DNA samples for pharmacy research and vaccine research? But we were doing it with Russia in 2017, and now, lo and behold, we're on the brink of war. They didn't want Russian samples, but they didn't want Ukraine samples, but they wanted Russian ones. Does that make any sense to you? I mean, can people give me a reason why they wanted the Russian samples and not Ukrainian samples? It gets creepy, doesn't it? Well, it gets even creepier.